In the shadowed halls of Thornfield Manor, a brilliant codebreaker lies dead in a locked study, a poisoned glass by her side, a cryptic note in red ink. 3R7K9M2P8Q. Hercule Poirot, master detective, unravels a web of secrets among three suspects, a charming spy, a jealous colleague, and a grieving student. As the cipher whispers, "Trust no one," Poirot's little gray cells hunt a killer hiding in plain sight. Will he crack the code before the truth slips away? Dive into the crimson cipher, a deadly puzzle of betrayal and deception. Chapter 1. The Locked Room. The November wind howled through St. Mary's Hollow, a quaint English village nestled in the folds of the Chiltern Hills, its cobbled streets slick with fallen leaves. In the cozy warmth of the Red Lion Inn, Hercule Poirot sat in a high-backed armchair near the crackling fire, his small, fastidious hands cradling a steaming cup of tisane. The delicate aroma of chamomile mingled with the faint scent of wood smoke, and his keen gray eyes surveyed the room with quiet satisfaction. Retirement, he had declared, suited him, yet his mind, ever restless, craved the puzzle of human nature. The inn's door swung open with a gust, admitting Inspector James Hargreaves, his overcoat damp and his ruddy face etched with urgency. "Monsieur Poirot," he exclaimed, brushing rain from his hat. "I'm sorry to disturb you, but we're in a devil of a fix. Dr. Evelyn Marsh, the codebreaker, has been found dead in her study at Thornfield Manor. The room was locked from the inside, and there's a strange note, full of numbers and letters. We need your help." Poirot's mustache quivered, a sign of awakening interest. He set down his tisane with deliberate care, his movements precise as a watchmaker's. "A locked room, you say? And a cipher? Mon Dieu, this is no ordinary death. Tell me, Inspector, was this Dr. Marsh a woman of importance?" Hargreaves nodded, his brow furrowed. "One of the best cryptographers in England. Worked on wartime codes, they say. Brilliant, but private. Lived alone at the manor, save for a few staff and visitors." Poirot rose, adjusting his immaculate lapels. "Then we shall go at once. A locked room and a coded note. These are the breadcrumbs of a clever mind, perhaps a wicked one. Lead onward, mon ami." The drive to Thornfield Manor was brief but bleak, the rain lashing the police cars' windows as they wound through narrow lanes. The manor loomed ahead, a Georgian edifice of weathered stone, its tall windows dark against the storm. Inside, the air was heavy with the scent of old books and polished wood, but an undercurrent of unease permeated the grand hall. A nervous butler led them up a creaking staircase to the study, where a constable stood guard. The door, solid oak with a gleaming brass lock, yielded to Hargreaves's key. Inside, Dr. Evelyn Marsh lay slumped across her mahogany desk, her silver hair spilling loose from its bun. She was a woman of 50, her face sharp and intelligent even in death, but now frozen in a grimace of pain. A crystal wine glass lay overturned, its contents staining the blotter crimson, and beside it a single sheet of paper bore a cryptic inscription in bold red ink: 3R7K9M2P8Q. Poirot's eyes darted over the scene, absorbing every detail with the precision of a camera. The study was a scholar's haven. Shelves groaned under the weight of cryptographic tomes. A typewriter sat silent, and a single lamp cast a golden glow. The windows were latched tight, their heavy curtains undisturbed. A small fireplace smoldered, its embers faint. He knelt by the desk, his gloved fingers hovering over the wine glass, detecting a faint, bitter, almond-like scent. "Poison, perhaps," he murmured. But how administered, and by whom? Hargreaves shifted uneasily. The door was locked when the maid found her this morning. Key was inside on the desk. No sign of forced entry, no hidden panels. We checked. It's as if the killer vanished into thin air. Poirot's lips curved into a faint, enigmatic smile. Vanished? Non, Inspector. The killer walked among us, as real as Yu Tiantian's system, you and I. They leave a trail, and the little gray cells of Hercule Poirot shall follow it. He picked up the coded note, studying the red ink. This cipher, it is no accident. It speaks, but in a language we must decipher. Tell me, was Dr. Marsh working on something sensitive? Hargreaves hesitated. Rumors say she was decoding old wartime messages, secrets some might want buried. Poirot nodded, his mind already turning. A secret worth killing for, perhaps. We shall summon the household. I must observe the faces of those who knew her best. As they left the study, Poirot paused, glancing back at the lifeless form of Evelyn Marsh. A locked room is no barrier to a determined mind, he said softly, nor is a cipher a shield for the guilty. With a final glance at the crimson-stained paper, he followed Hargreaves into the storm, his resolve as sharp as the wind outside. Chapter 2. The Suspects. The grand drawing-room of Thornfield Manor, with its high ceilings and heavy damask curtains, seemed to hold its breath as Hercule Poirot surveyed the assembled company. The fire in the marble hearth crackled, casting flickering shadows across the faces of those gathered, each a potential key to the puzzle of Dr. Evelyn Marsh's death. Inspector Hargreaves stood by the door, his notebook open, his broad shoulders tense with the weight of an impossible crime. Poirot, impeccable in his tailored suit, stood near the center of the room, his small stature belied by the commanding glint in his gray eyes. His mustache, perfectly symmetrical, quivered slightly as he clasped his hands behind his back, preparing to unravel the human threads before him. The rain had ceased, but a damp chill lingered, seeping through the manor's ancient walls. Poirot's gaze moved from one face to another, noting the subtle signs of fear, defiance, or grief. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice clear and precise, with the faintest trace of his Belgian accent. "We are gathered to discuss a tragedy, the death of Dr. Evelyn Marsh, a woman of remarkable intellect, found dead in a locked study with a cipher in her hand. The circumstances, they are extraordinary, but Hercule Poirot does not believe in miracles, only in facts and in the secrets of the human heart. Let us meet those who knew her best." Inspector Hargreaves cleared his throat, stepping forward with a deferential nod. "Right then. We've 3 individuals who were closest to Dr. Marsh, each with a connection to her work or her life. I'll introduce them, and Monsieur Poirot will have questions, no doubt." His tone carried a mix of respect and curiosity, as if he still marveled at Poirot's reputation for untangling the impossible. Victor Crane, the diplomat with shadows. The first to step into Poirot's scrutiny was Victor Crane, a man whose polished exterior seemed crafted for the salons of Paris or Vienna rather than the quiet lanes of St. Mary's Hollow. He was tall, nearing 40, with sleek dark hair and a face that suggested both charm and calculation. His gray suit was impeccably cut, his silk tie a subtle shade of burgundy. He carried himself with the ease of a man accustomed to navigating power, yet there was a guarded quality to his movements, like a fencer awaiting an opponent's lunge. "Monsieur Crane," Poirot said, his eyes narrowing as he studied the diplomat. "You are, I understand, A man of international affairs. A diplomat, oui? But perhaps more, a man who deals in secrets? Crane's lips curved into a smile, smooth and practiced, revealing nothing. You flatter me, Monsieur Poirot. I'm merely a civil servant, attached to the Foreign Office. My work involves trade negotiations, cultural exchanges, dull stuff, really. His voice was warm, almost musical, but Poirot detected a faint edge, as if Crane were measuring every word. And your connection to Dr. Marsh? Poirot pressed, tilting his head slightly. Crane leaned back in his chair, crossing one leg over the other. Evelyn and I were old acquaintances. We met years ago at a conference in Geneva. Cryptography and diplomacy often intersect, you know. I was visiting the manor to discuss her work on historical ciphers, purely academic interest. He paused, then added, Last night we dined together in the manor's dining room. We talked of old codes, Bletchley Park, Enigma, that sort of thing. I left her around 10, quite alive. Poirot's mustache twitched. And where did you go after this dinner, monsieur? To my rooms here at the manor, Crane replied without hesitation. I had correspondence to attend to. The butler can confirm I was in by 11. His eyes met Poirot's, steady and unyielding, but Poirot noted the faintest tightening of his jaw. Merci, Monsieur Crane, Poirot said, dismissing him with a nod. As Crane returned to his seat, Poirot's mind catalogued the details. The diplomat's composure was too perfect, his alibi too tidy. A man of secrets indeed, and secrets were dangerous currency in a house where a codebreaker had died. Dr. Leonard Baxter, the envious colleague. Next came Dr. Leonard Baxter, a man whose disheveled appearance contrasted sharply with Crane's elegance. Baxter was in his late 40s, with thinning brown hair and spectacles that slipped down his nose. His tweed jacket was rumpled, his fingers stained with ink, and his eyes darted nervously as he stood before Poirot. He clutched a notebook, its edges frayed, as if it were a shield against the detective's piercing gaze. Doctor, Baxter, Poirot began, his tone gentle but probing. You were Dr. Marsh's colleague, non? A fellow scholar of codes and ciphers. Tell me, what was your relationship with the deceased? Baxter swallowed, pushing his spectacles up. We worked together for years, he said, his voice high and uneven. Evelyn was brilliant, but demanding. We collaborated on decryption techniques, published papers together. Lately, though, we disagreed on methodology. She thought my approach to Polybius squares was outdated. He flushed, his hands tightening on the notebook. We had a row yesterday afternoon in her study, but I swear I left her alive. Poirot's eyes gleamed. A row, you say? About what, précisément? Baxter hesitated, glancing at Hargreaves as if seeking rescue. She dismissed my work, said I was holding back progress. It was professional, nothing personal. His voice rose, then faltered. I went to the Red Lion afterward, had a pint, asked the barman. He saw me. Poirot tilted his head, studying the man's trembling hands. And what time did you return to the manor, monsieur? Baxter blinked rapidly. Around 9, I think. I went to my office to work. I didn't see Evelyn again. His eyes flicked to the floor, avoiding Poirot's gaze. Poirot noted the ink stains, the nervous tick in Baxter's cheek. You are a man of detail, Dr. Baxter, yet your memory of time is vague. Curious, non? He waved a hand dismissively, but his mind was already turning. Envy, he knew, could fester into darker deeds, and Baxter's agitation suggested more than academic rivalry. Clara Wren. the devoted student. The final suspect was Clara Wren, a young woman of 22 whose delicate features were marred by red Jian-Ni system, red eyes, and a pallor that spoke of sleepless nights. She wore a simple woolen sweater and skirt, her auburn hair pulled back in a loose braid, and her hands twisted together in her lap, betraying her anxiety. When Hargreaves called her forward, she rose hesitantly, her movements graceful but uncertain, like a deer stepping into an open field. "Mademoiselle Wren," Poirot said, his voice softening as if to coax a frightened bird. "You were Dr. Marsh's student, oui? A protégé of great promise, I am told. Tell me of your bond with her." Clara's voice was low, almost a whisper, thick with emotion. "Dr. Marsh was my mentor. She took me under her wing 2 years ago, when I was just a scholarship girl at Oxford. She taught me everything, how to break codes, how to think like a cryptographer. She was stern but kind, like a mother. Her eyes welled with tears, and she brushed them away. I was in my room last night, studying her notes on a wartime cipher. I didn't see her after supper." Poirot leaned forward slightly, his gaze gentle but searching. "And this cipher, mademoiselle, it was important work?" Clara nodded, her voice steadier. She was decoding messages from the war, ones that might still matter to certain people. She was cautious, always locking her study. She said knowledge was power, and power could be dangerous. Her eyes flicked briefly toward Crane, then back to Poirot, a shadow of fear crossing her face. Poirot observed the gesture, his mind noting the unspoken tension. "You loved her, this is clear," he said softly. "But even love can hide resentment, non? Did you ever feel she held you back, perhaps?" Clara's eyes widened, and she shook her head fiercely. "Never. She pushed me to be better. I owed her everything." Her voice cracked, and she looked down, her hands trembling. Poirot leaned back, his fingers steepled. "Merci, Mademoiselle Wren. You may sit." As Clara returned to her seat, he saw the raw grief in her posture, but also the flicker of fear when she glanced at Crane. It was a thread, delicate but significant, and Poirot's mind seized upon it. The web of motives. With the introductions concluded, Poirot paced slowly before the hearth, his polished shoes clicking softly on the oak floor. The room was silent save for the fire's crackle and the distant howl of the wind. Hargreaves closed his notebook, looking expectantly at Poirot, who seemed lost in thought, his eyes half closed as if listening to an inner voice. "Each of you," Poirot said at last, turning to face the trio, "has a connection to Dr. Marsh, and thus a potential motive. Monsieur Crane, you are a man of secrets, perhaps guarding ones, Doctor. Marsh uncovered. Dr. Baxter, your professional envy may have curdled into something darker, and Mademoiselle Wren, your devotion to your mentor does not preclude ambition or betrayal. The locked room and the cipher are puzzles, yes, but the human heart is the greatest riddle of all." He paused, letting his words settle like dust in the heavy air. Crane's face remained a mask of calm, though his fingers tapped lightly on his knee. Baxter shifted uncomfortably, his spectacles slipping again. Clara's hands stilled, but her eyes remained fixed on the floor, as if afraid to meet Poirot's gaze. Hargreaves spoke up, his voice gruff. "What's your next step, Monsieur Poirot? The scene's clean, no fingerprints but hers on the glass, no sign of entry. It's a proper mystery." Poirot's smile was faint, almost secretive. "The next step, Inspector, is to listen, to observe. The cipher, the poison, the locked door, These are the stage props of a clever mind. But the little gray cells, they see beyond the stage. We shall return to the study, and we shall question further. The truth, it hides, but not for long. As the group dispersed, Poirot lingered by the fire, his mind a whirl of impressions. Crane's polished alibi, Baxter's nervous defensiveness, Clara's guarded fear. Each was a piece of the puzzle. The cipher, 3R7K9M2P8Q, danced in his thoughts, its red ink a silent challenge. He knew the killer was among them, their motive woven into the fabric of their lives. The manor, with its secrets and shadows, held the answers, and Hercule Poirot would find them. Chapter 3. The Scene of the Crime. The storm had passed, leaving Thornfield Manor cloaked in a damp, eerie stillness. Hercule Poirot, his overcoat buttoned against the chill, followed Inspector Hargreaves up the creaking staircase to Dr. Evelyn Marsh's study. The corridor was dim, lit only by flickering sconces that cast long shadows on the paneled walls. Poirot's polished shoes tapped rhythmically, a counterpoint to Hargreaves's heavier tread. The detective's mind was already at work, piecing together the fragments of the locked room mystery that had drawn him from the comforts of the Red Lion Inn. "Mind your step, Monsieur Poirot," Hargreaves said, pausing at the study door. "We've kept everything as it was, per your instructions. Not a paper moved." He turned the brass key, and the door swung inward with a faint groan, revealing the scene of death. The study was a scholar's sanctuary, its air thick with the scent of aged paper and leather. Dr. Marsh lay as they had found her, slumped over her mahogany desk, her silver hair a stark contrast against the dark wood. The overturned wine glass glinted in the lamplight, its spilled contents dried into a crimson stain on the blotter. Beside it, the cryptic note, 3R7K9M2P8Q, stood out in bold red ink, a silent taunt to Poirot's intellect. The room was orderly, almost austere, save for the chaos of death. Bookshelves lined with cryptographic texts, a typewriter silent in the corner, and a small fireplace where embers glowed faintly. Poirot stood motionless for a moment, his gray eyes sweeping the room with the precision of a metronome. "A locked room," he murmured, "yet a killer entered and left. This is no magic, Inspector. It is method." He approached the desk, his gloved hands hovering over the scene, careful not to disturb its delicate clues. Hargreaves stood by, his notebook open, his face a mix of skepticism and hope. "The coroner's preliminary report suggests poison, cyanide likely, from the smell of the wine. But how it got there, and how the killer got in?" He shook his head. "The door was locked, key inside, windows bolted, no sign of tampering. It's impossible." Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile playing beneath it. "Impossible, mon ami? Non, merely improbable. The human mind constructs such puzzles to conceal, but Hercule Poirot sees through the veil." He leaned closer to the wine glass, inhaling delicately. The bitter, almond-like scent was unmistakable. "Cyanide, oui, swift and merciless. But the glass bears only her fingerprints, you say?" Hargreaves nodded. "Just hers. We dusted everything, desk, glass, even the note. Nothing else." Poirot's eyes narrowed as he examined the glass, its crystal facets catching the light. And yet, poison does not appear by itself. Someone placed it, someone planned. He turned to the note, lifting it carefully by its edges. The red ink was vivid, almost theatrical, against the cream paper. "This cipher," he said, "it is no mere scribble. It is deliberate, a message or a mask. Why red ink, I wonder? To draw the eye, perhaps, or to signify something deeper. He set the note down and moved to the bookshelves, his fingers trailing lightly over the spines. One book, a worn volume on substitution ciphers, was slightly askew, its pages open to a chapter on Polybius squares. Poirot's brow furrowed. "This book, it was open when you found her?" Hargreaves consulted his notes. "Yes, exactly as you see it. The maid said doctor. Marsh was reading it yesterday." Poirot nodded, his mind cataloguing the detail. She was studying, perhaps preparing to decode her own cipher, or another's. He glanced at the fireplace, where a faint wisp of smoke curled upward. Kneeling, he peered into the grate, noting a trace of ash that seemed fresher than the rest. "Curious," he said, retrieving a small fragment of paper, charred but legible. It bore a single word: enigma. "Enigma?" Hargreaves echoed, peering over Poirot's shoulder. "The wartime code machine?" "Perhaps," Poirot replied, slipping the fragment into an envelope. "Or perhaps a clue to what Dr. Marsh feared. She was a codebreaker, non? Her work touched secrets that linger long after war's end." He moved to the windows, testing each latch. They were secure, the bolts rusted with age, undisturbed. The heavy curtains showed no signs of being moved, their folds pristine. Poirot tapped his temple, his eyes half closed. "The room is a fortress, yet the killer entered. How? Not by magic, but by cunning." Hargreaves scratched his head. "We've searched for secret panels, trapdoors. Nothing. The walls are solid, the floor intact. Unless the killer flew in?" Poirot chuckled softly. "No wings, Inspector, but perhaps a key, or a trick of timing. Tell me, who had access to this room?" "The butler, Mr. Grayson, has a master key," Hargreaves said. "The maid, Ellen, cleans daily, but swears she didn't. Enter last night. Dr. Marsh was particular about her privacy, kept the door locked when working." "And the suspects?" Poirot asked, his voice sharp. "Crane was a guest, had no key. Baxter and Clara used the study for work, but only with Marsh present. No one else was seen near here after supper." Poirot nodded, his gaze returning to the desk. A small ink bottle, its red contents matching the cipher's hue, caught his eye. He lifted it, noting its weight. "This ink, it is distinctive. We must learn if others in the manor use it." He set it down and examined the typewriter, its ribbon slightly askew. A faint smudge of red ink marred the keys, a detail Hargreaves had missed. "Sloppy," Poirot murmured, "or intentional." He stepped back, his hands clasped behind him, and surveyed the room once more. The scene was a tableau of death, meticulously staged. The locked door, the poison, the cipher, all pointed to a mind both bold and calculating. "The killer," Poirot said softly, "wished to confound us, to make us doubt our senses, but the little gray cells, they do not doubt, they see." Hargreaves closed his notebook, his expression weary. "What now, Monsieur Poirot? The cipher's a dead end until we crack it, and the room's given us nothing." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Nothing, Inspector?" "No, it has given us much. The poison, the ink, the book, the ash. These are whispers of truth. We shall speak to the staff, confirm their movements, and we shall watch our suspects closely, for one of them has left a footprint in this room, invisible but present." As they left the study, Poirot paused at the threshold, glancing back at Dr. Marsh's still form. The weight of her death and the secrets she carried hung heavy in the air. "Rest assured, madame," he whispered, "your cipher will speak, and your killer will answer." With that, he closed the door, the lock clicking shut like the sealing of a vow. Chapter 4. The Spy's Alibi. The morning light filtered weakly through the leaded windows of Thornfield Manor, casting a pale glow over the polished oak floors. Hercule Poirot, ever immaculate in his pressed suit and gleaming patent leather shoes, stood in the hallway outside Victor Crane's guest suite, his mustache perfectly aligned, his gray eyes sharp with purpose. Inspector Hargreaves, trailing behind, adjusted his tie, his broad face etched with the strain of a sleepless night. The locked room mystery of Dr. Evelyn Marsh's death weighed heavily, and Poirot's relentless curiosity was their only beacon in the fog of clues. "Monsieur Crane," Poirot said, knocking briskly on the door. "It is Hercule Poirot. I would have words with you, if you please." His voice was polite, but carried an edge of command, like a velvet glove over a steel fist. The door opened, revealing Victor Crane, as composed as ever. His dark hair was neatly combed, his gray suit replaced by a charcoal one, equally impeccable. A faint scent of cigarette smoke clung to him, and his smile was a calculated blend of charm and wariness. "Monsieur Poirot, Inspector," he greeted, stepping aside. "Do come in. I trust you've made progress on poor Evelyn's case?" Poirot entered, his gaze sweeping the room with meticulous care. The suite was elegant, with a four-poster bed, a writing desk piled with maps and foreign novels, and a window overlooking the manor's rain-soaked gardens. A silver cigarette case gleamed on the desk, beside a half-finished letter in precise handwriting. Poirot noted the absence of personal touches, no photographs, no trinkets, as if Crane were a man who traveled light, leaving no trace. "We progress, Monsieur Crane," Poirot said, settling into a leather chair without invitation. "But progress, it requires truth. You were close to Dr. Marsh, no? A man of your profession surely found her work of interest." Crane lit a cigarette, the match flaring briefly in the dim room. "As I told you, we were acquaintances," he said, exhaling a thin stream of smoke. "Evelyn's mind was extraordinary. We dined last night, discussed old codes, nothing sensitive, just nostalgia for wartime cryptography. I left her at 10, returned here, and worked on correspondence until midnight." His tone was smooth, almost rehearsed, and his eyes met Poirot's without flinching. Poirot's fingers tapped lightly on the armrest. "And after midnight, monsieur, where were you when Dr. Marsh met her end? Perhaps around 2 in the morning?" Crane's smile tightened, but his voice remained steady. "I was in London, dining with Ambassador Dietrich at the Savoy. I caught the last train back, arriving here around 1. The butler, Grayson, let me in. I went straight to bed." He gestured to a train ticket stub on the desk, its edges crisp, as if placed for display. Poirot picked up the stub, examining it with care. The 11:15 from Paddington, arriving at 12:50. Convenient, non? Yet it allows time for a man of agility to return to the manor, to slip into a locked study, perhaps. His eyes flicked to Crane's face, searching for a crack in the diplomat's composure. Crane laughed, a low, controlled sound. "You have a vivid imagination, Monsieur Poirot. I'm no acrobat, and I had no key to Evelyn's study. Besides, why would I harm her? She was a friend." Poirot's mustache twitched. "A friend who knew secrets, perhaps? Dr. Marsh worked on codes that could unsettle certain interests. You are a diplomat, monsieur, but whispers say you are more. A man who trades in shadows." Crane's eyes narrowed, the first hint of unease. "Whispers are dangerous, monsieur. I deal in treaties, not espionage. Evelyn's work was academic, not a threat." He stubbed out his cigarette, his movements deliberate. If you seek a motive, look to her colleagues. Baxter, for instance. He was green with envy over her success. Poirot rose, pacing slowly, to the window. Envy, oui, it is a poison of the heart, but so is fear of exposure. Tell me, Monsieur Crane, did you bring anything to the manor yesterday? A gift, perhaps? A bottle of wine? Crane's brow furrowed, but his voice remained even. A bottle of Bordeaux, yes, a gesture of hospitality. We shared it at dinner. Evelyn enjoyed it. He paused, then added, "The butler can confirm it was opened at the table." Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. "A fine gesture indeed, and this correspondence you worked on. May I see it?" Crane hesitated, then gestured to the desk. Official letters, dull stuff, trade agreements with Brussels, nothing to interest a detective. Poirot glanced at the papers, noting their bland content. Diplomatic jargon, nothing more. Yet a small locked box beneath the desk caught his eye, its brass gleaming faintly. "And this box, monsieur? What secrets does it hold?" Crane's smile returned, but it was colder now. "Personal effects. A diplomat must keep some things private, even from the great Hercule Poirot." Poirot inclined his head as if conceding the point. "For now, monsieur, I shall respect your privacy. But secrets, they have a way of revealing themselves." He turned to Hargreaves, who had been scribbling notes. "Inspector, verify Monsieur Crane's train journey and his arrival with the butler. Every detail, it matters." As they left the suite, Poirot's mind was a whirl of impressions. Crane's alibi was polished, like the man himself, but its very perfection raised suspicion. The train ticket, the Bordeaux, the locked box, each was a thread in the tapestry of deception. "He is clever, this one," Poirot murmured to Hargreaves. "But cleverness betrays itself. We shall see if his story holds." Outside, the manor's gardens were gray and sodden, mirroring the weight of the mystery. Poirot paused, his eyes distant. "The spy, he plays a game of shadows," he said softly. "But the light of truth, it finds even the darkest corners." With that, he turned toward the manor, ready to pursue the next thread in the crimson Cipher's web. Chapter 5. The colleagues' jealousy. The afternoon light waned over Thornfield Manor, casting long shadows through the tall windows of Dr. Leonard Baxter's cluttered office. Hercule Poirot, his small frame a stark contrast to the chaotic stacks of papers and books, stood in the doorway, his sharp gray eyes scanning the disarray. Inspector Hargreaves lingered behind, his notebook worn from constant use, his expression one of quiet frustration. The mystery of Dr. Evelyn Marsh's death remained a locked puzzle, and Poirot's relentless pursuit of truth now turned to the nervous colleague whose envy had been whispered about in the manor's hushed corridors. "Doctor Baxter," Poirot called, his voice crisp yet courteous. "It is Hercule Poirot. I would speak with you, if you please." He stepped into the room, his polished shoes avoiding a stray manuscript on the floor, his mustache impeccably aligned as always. Baxter looked up from his desk, his spectacles slipping down his nose, his thinning hair disheveled. He was a man of 48, his tweed jacket patched at the elbows, his fingers stained with ink and twitching nervously. A half-empty teacup sat among scattered notes, and his eyes darted to Poirot with a mix of apprehension and defiance. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, pushing his spectacles up. "I've told the inspector everything. I don't know what more you expect from me." Poirot smiled faintly, settling into a creaking chair opposite the desk. Everything, Doctor. Baxter is a word that covers much but reveals little. The truth, it hides in the details, and I am a man who cherishes details. You were Doctor. Marsh's colleague, oui? A partner in the art of breaking codes. Yet there was discord between you, was there not? Baxter flushed, his hands fumbling with a pencil. Discord? That's putting it strongly. Evelyn and I, we had professional differences. She was brilliant, no question, but she could be overbearing, always insisting her methods were superior. His voice rose, then faltered. We argued yesterday afternoon, in her study, about a decryption technique. She called my work on Polybius squares pedestrian. Pedestrian, after all my years of research. Poirot's eyes gleamed, noting the heat in Baxter's tone. An insult to a scholar's pride, it stings. No? Tell me, what was this argument, précisément? Baxter leaned back, his chair squeaking. She was working on a wartime cipher, something about enigma variations. I suggested a modular approach using matrix transformations, but she dismissed it outright. Said I was stuck in the past. We shouted, I'll admit, but I left her study by 6 o'clock. She was alive, I swear it. His voice cracked, and he looked away, his fingers tightening on the pencil until it snapped. Poirot's gaze drifted to the desk, where a small bottle of red ink sat beside a fountain pen, its hue matching the cryptic note found with Dr. Marsh's body. This ink, he said, lifting the bottle with gloved fingers, it is most distinctive. The cipher, 3R7K9M2P8Q, was written in such a color. You use it often, Doctor. Baxter? Baxter blinked, his face paling. Sometimes, yes. It's common here. Evelyn used it too. Half the Manor's staff probably have a bottle. He gestured vaguely toward a shelf where another bottle, unopened, stood among dusty journals. It's just ink, Monsieur Poirot. Nothing sinister. Poirot set the bottle down, his expression unreadable. Common, perhaps, but convenient, certainly. Let us return to your movements. You left the study at 6, you say. Where did you go? To the Red Lion, Baxter replied quickly. I needed a drink after that row. I was there until 8, maybe 9. The barman, Tom, can vouch for me. His eyes flicked to Hargreaves, as if seeking confirmation. Hargreaves nodded. We'll check with Tom, but he mentioned you left earlier than 9, closer to 7:30. Baxter's mouth opened, then closed. Well, I lost track of time. I came back here to my office to work. I was alone. His voice grew defensive, his hands twisting the broken pencil. Poirot rose, pacing slowly around the room, his eyes catching every detail. The overflowing waste bin, the open cryptographic texts, a crumpled letter half hidden under a book. He retrieved it, smoothing it out. It was from Doctor. Marsh, dated a week prior, its tone sharp. Leonard, your latest draft is sloppy. If you cannot match my standards, our collaboration ends. Poirot held it up, his gaze piercing. She was harsh, your colleague. This criticism, it wounded you? Baxter's face reddened. She was always like that, cutting, superior. I worked as hard as she did, but she took all the credit. Our papers, our grants. She was the name. I was the shadow. He caught himself, his voice dropping. But I didn't kill her. I wouldn't. I respected her, in spite of everything. Poirot's mustache twitched. Respect and resentment. They are close cousins, non? You had access to her study, to her habits, and perhaps to other things. Chemicals, perhaps, from your work? He gestured to a locked cabinet in the corner, its glass front revealing vials and bottles. Baxter's eyes widened. Those are for experiments, solvents, dyes, nothing dangerous. I'm no chemist, Monsieur Poirot. I deal in numbers, not poisons." Poirot nodded, his expression serene, but his mind racing. "Numbers, oui, and numbers can hide truths. Tell me, Doctor. Baxter, did you ever try to decipher the note found with Dr. Marsh, the 3R7K9M2P8Q? Baxter shook his head. "I saw it briefly when the inspector showed me. It's gibberish without context. Evelyn was working on something complex, maybe a Polybius square, maybe something else. She didn't share it with me." His tone held a bitter edge, as if her secrecy stung as much as her criticism. Poirot paused by the waste bin, his gloved hand sifting through papers. A torn sheet caught his eye, its red ink faint but familiar. It bore a partial sequence. 7K9M. He held it up, his voice soft but sharp. "And this, monsieur? A practice cipher, perhaps, discarded in haste?" Baxter's face drained of color. I was doodling, testing sequences. It's nothing. I often scribble codes to clear my mind." His hands shook, betraying his panic. Poirot slipped the paper into an envelope, his smile enigmatic. "Nothing, you say? Yet it matches the cipher of death. A coincidence, perhaps, but Hercule Poirot does not trust coincidences." He turned to Hargreaves. "Inspector, confirm, Doctor. Baxter's time at the Red Lion, and search the cabinet for any substances that might interest us." As they left the office, Poirot's mind churned. Baxter's envy was palpable, his alibi shaky, and the red ink a thread tying him to the crime. Yet his fear seemed genuine, his anger more wounded than murderous. "He is a man of passion," Poirot murmured to Hargreaves. "But is it the passion of a killer? We shall see." The manor's secrets were unraveling, one ink-stained clue at a time. Chapter 6. The Student's Sorrow. The gardens of Thornfield Manor, though sodden from the recent storm, retained a melancholy beauty under the late afternoon sky. The rose bushes, their petals bruised by rain, drooped in neat rows, and the gravel paths crunched softly under Hercule Poirot's polished shoes as he walked beside Clara Wren. The young woman, her auburn hair loosely braided, and her woolen sweater slightly frayed at the cuffs, kept her gaze fixed on the ground, her hands clasped tightly before her. Inspector Hargreaves had remained in the manor to question the staff, leaving Poirot to probe the heart of Dr. Evelyn Marsh's devoted student alone. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of wet earth and fading blooms, and Poirot's gray eyes, ever alert, noted the tremor in Clara's slender frame. "Mademoiselle Wren," Poirot began, his voice gentle as a confessor's, yet laced with the precision of a surgeon's blade. "You are, I understand, the protégée of Dr. Marsh, a young woman of great promise, chosen by a mind most brilliant. Tell me of her, and of your place in her world." Clara's eyes, red-rimmed from tears, lifted briefly to meet his, then dropped again. "She was everything to me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, thick with grief. "Dr. Marsh found me at Oxford, just a scholarship student struggling to keep up. She saw something in me, potential, she said, and brought me here to study under her. She taught me how to unravel codes, to see patterns where others saw chaos. She was strict, yes, but kind, like a mother I never had." A tear escaped, and she brushed it away with a quick, almost angry gesture. Poirot nodded, his hands clasped behind his back as they paused by a stone bench. "A mentor, then, and a guide. But such bonds, they are complex, non? Admiration can mingle with other feelings, envy, perhaps, or the desire to step out from a teacher's shadow." Clara's head snapped up, her eyes flashing with indignation. Never. I owed her everything. She was preparing me to take over her work one day. I would never resent her. Her voice trembled, but there was a fierceness in it, a loyalty that Poirot noted carefully. He gestured to the bench, and they sat, the damp stone cold beneath them. "Tell me, mademoiselle, of Dr. Marsh's work. She was decoding something important, oui? Something that made her cautious?" Clara hesitated, her fingers twisting the edge of her sweater. She was working on a wartime cipher, messages from the last war that were never cracked. She called them ghost codes, secrets that could still matter to certain people. She was careful, always locking her study, checking her papers. A week ago, she told me she'd found something troubling, something about a foreign contact. Her voice dropped to a whisper. She was scared, Monsieur Poirot. I'd never seen her like that. Poirot's mustache quivered slightly, a sign of his quickening interest. Scared, you say? Of whom or what? Did she name this contact? Clara shook her head, her braids swaying. No, she wouldn't say. She told me to focus on my studies, to stay out of it. But I could tell it weighed on her. She kept a diary, locked in her desk. Maybe it's there. Her eyes flicked toward the manor, then back to Poirot, a shadow of fear crossing her face. Poirot leaned forward, his gaze piercing yet kind. "And last night, mademoiselle, where were you when Dr. Marsh met her end? You said you were studying, no?" "Yes," Clara replied, her voice steadier now. "I was in my room, going over her notes on Polybius squares. She'd given me a practice cipher to solve, nothing related to her work. I didn't leave my room after supper, around 8 o'clock. I heard nothing, saw nothing." Her hands stilled, but her eyes darted briefly toward the manor's upper windows, where Victor Crane's suite overlooked the garden. Poirot followed her glance, his mind cataloguing the gesture. "You look toward Monsieur Crane's window, mademoiselle. Is there something you wish to say about him?" Clara's breath caught, and she shook her head quickly. "No, nothing. I don't trust him. He was always so charming with Dr. Marsh, but it felt calculated. She didn't see it, but I did." Her voice held a note of conviction, tempered by fear. Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Calculated, you say? Did you see Monsieur Crane last night, perhaps near the study?" Clara hesitated, her fingers tightening on her sweater. I thought I saw someone near her study, late, maybe around midnight. A shadow in the hall. It could have been him, but it was dark, and I was in my room, looking out. I didn't want to get involved." Her voice trembled, and she looked down, as if ashamed of her silence. Poirot leaned back, his expression serene, but his mind racing. "You are young, mademoiselle, and fear is natural. But truth, it requires courage. This shadow, it is a thread we must follow." He rose, offering her a hand to stand. "Come, let us walk. The air, it clears the mind." As they strolled along the gravel path, Poirot observed Clara's hands, calloused from hours of writing, her nails bitten short. Her grief was genuine, he sensed, but her fear suggested knowledge she dared not voice. "You loved Dr. Marsh," he said softly, "but love does not blind you to danger. If you know more, mademoiselle, you must speak." Clara stopped, her eyes welling again. "I don't know anything certain," she whispered. "But Dr. Marsh said once that knowledge could be a weapon, and she was afraid someone might use it against her. I think she meant someone close." Her voice broke, and she turned away, hugging her arms to her chest. Poirot placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Merci, Mademoiselle Wren. Your words, they are a light in the darkness. We shall find this truth together." He glanced back at the manor, its windows like eyes watching their every move. "Return to your room and say nothing of this for now. The killer, they are watchful, and we must be more so." As Clara walked away, her steps slow and hesitant, Poirot stood alone in the garden, his mind a whirl of impressions. Clara's sorrow was a beacon, but her fear pointed to a shadow. Perhaps Crane, perhaps another. The diary she mentioned, locked in Marsh's desk, was a new thread to pull. "The heart of a student," he murmured. "It is loyal, but it sees more than it speaks." With a final glance at the manor, he turned back toward the house, ready to unravel the next knot in the Crimson Cipher's mystery. Chapter 6. The Student's Sorrow. The Gardens of Thornfield. Manor, though sodden from the recent storm, retained a melancholy beauty under the late afternoon sky. The rose bushes, their petals bruised by rain, drooped in neat rows, and the gravel paths crunched softly under Hercule Poirot's polished shoes as he walked beside Clara Wren. The young woman, her auburn hair loosely braided and her woolen sweater slightly frayed at the cuffs, kept her gaze fixed on the ground, her hands clasped tightly before her. Inspector Hargreaves had remained in the manor to question the staff, leaving Poirot to probe the heart of Dr. Evelyn Marsh's devoted student alone. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of wet earth and fading blooms, and Poirot's gray eyes, ever alert, noted the tremor in Clara's slender frame. "Mademoiselle Wren," Poirot began, his voice gentle as a confessor's, yet laced with the precision of a surgeon's blade. "You are, I understand, the protégée of Dr. Marsh, a young woman of great promise, chosen by a mind most brilliant. Tell me of her and of your place in her world." Clara's eyes, red-rimmed from tears, lifted briefly to meet his, then dropped again. "She was everything to me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, thick with grief. "Dr. Marsh found me at Oxford, just a scholarship student struggling to keep up. She saw something in me, potential, she said, and brought me here to study under her. She taught me how to unravel codes, to see patterns where others saw chaos. She was strict, yes, but kind, like a mother I never had." A tear escaped, and she brushed it away with a quick, almost angry gesture. Poirot nodded, his hands clasped behind his back as they paused by a stone bench. "A mentor, then, and a guide. But such bonds, they are complex. None? Admiration can mingle with other feelings. Envy, perhaps, or the desire to step out from a teacher's shadow?" Clara's head snapped up, her eyes flashing with indignation. "Never! I owed her everything. She was preparing me to take over her work one day. I would never resent her." Her voice trembled, but there was a fierceness in it, a loyalty that Poirot noted carefully. He gestured to the bench, and they sat, the damp stone cold beneath them. "Tell me, mademoiselle, of Dr. Marsh's work. She was decoding something important, oui? Something that made her cautious?" Clara hesitated, her fingers twisting the edge of her sweater. "She was working on a wartime cipher, messages from the last war that were never cracked. She called them ghost codes, secrets that could still matter to certain people. She was careful, always locking her study, checking her papers. A week ago, she told me she'd found something troubling, something about a foreign contact." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "She was scared, Monsieur Poirot. I'd never seen her like that." Poirot's mustache quivered slightly, a sign of his quickening interest. "Scared, you say? Of whom or what? Did she name this contact?" Clara shook her head, her braid swaying. No, she wouldn't say. She told me to focus on my studies, to stay out of it, but I could tell it weighed on her. She kept a diary, locked in her desk. Maybe it's there. Her eyes flicked toward the manor, then back to Poirot, a shadow of fear crossing her face. Poirot leaned forward, his gaze piercing yet kind. "And last night, mademoiselle, where were you when Dr. Marsh met her end? You said you were studying, non?" "Yes," Clara replied, her voice steadier now. "I was in my room, going over her notes on Polybius squares. She'd given me a practice cipher to solve, nothing related to her work. I didn't leave my room after supper, around 8 o'clock. I heard nothing, saw nothing." Her hands stilled, but her eyes darted briefly toward the manor's upper windows, where Victor Crane's suite overlooked the garden. Poirot followed her glance, his mind cataloguing the gesture. "You look toward Monsieur Crane's window, mademoiselle. Is there something you wish to say about him?" Clara's breath caught, and she shook her head quickly. "No, nothing. I don't trust him. He was always so charming with Dr. Marsh, but it felt calculated. She didn't see it, but I did." Her voice held a note of conviction, tempered by fear. Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Calculated, you say? Did you see Monsieur Crane last night, perhaps near the study?" Clara hesitated, her fingers tightening on her sweater. I thought I saw someone near her study, late, maybe around midnight. A shadow in the hall. It could have been him, but it was dark, and I was in my room, looking out. I didn't want to get involved." Her voice trembled, and she looked down, as if ashamed of her silence. Poirot leaned back, his expression serene, but his mind racing. "You are young, mademoiselle, and fear is natural. But truth, it requires courage. This shadow, it is a thread we must follow." He rose, offering her a hand to stand. "Come, let us walk. The air, it clears the mind." As they strolled along the gravel path, Poirot observed Clara's hands, calloused from hours of writing, her nails bitten short. Her grief was genuine, he sensed, but her fear suggested knowledge she dared not voice. "You loved Dr. Marsh," he said softly, "but love does not blind you to danger. If you know more, mademoiselle, you must speak." Clara stopped, her eyes welling again. "I don't know anything certain," she whispered. "But Dr. Marsh said once that knowledge could be a weapon, and she was afraid someone might use it against her. I think she meant someone close." Her voice broke, and she turned away, hugging her arms to her chest. Poirot placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Merci, Mademoiselle Wren. Your words, they are a light in the darkness. We shall find this truth together." He glanced back at the manor, its windows like eyes watching their every move. "Return to your room and say nothing of this for now. The killer, they are watchful, and we must be more so." As Clara walked away, her steps slow and hesitant, Poirot stood alone in the garden, his mind a whirl of impressions. Clara's sorrow was a beacon, but her fear pointed to a shadow. Perhaps Crane, perhaps another. The diary she mentioned, locked in Marsh's desk, was a new thread to pull. "The heart of a student," he murmured. "It is loyal, but it sees more than it speaks." With a final glance at the manor, he turned back toward the house, ready to unravel the next knot in the crimson cipher's mystery. Chapter 8. The Cipher's Secret. The twilight deepened over Thornfield Manor, painting the study of Dr. Evelyn Marsh in hues of shadow and lamplight. Hercule Poirot sat at the late codebreaker's desk, his small, fastidious hands illuminated by the glow of a single lamp. The cryptic note, 3R7K9M2P8Q, lay before him, its red ink stark against the cream paper, a puzzle that mocked his intellect. Inspector Hargreaves stood by the window, his silhouette framed against the darkening sky, his patience fraying as Poirot's silence stretched. The room, still heavy with the presence of death, seemed to hold its breath, as if guarding the secrets of its former occupant. Poirot's gray eyes, sharp as a hawk's, traced the cipher's letters and numbers, his mind a whirlwind of patterns and possibilities. "This note," he murmured, his Belgian accent soft but precise. "It is the heart of the mystery, non? A message, a warning, or perhaps a deception. But Hercule Poirot shall uncover its truth." Hargreaves shifted, his boots creaking on the oak floor. "It's gibberish to me, Monsieur Poirot. We've had codebreakers look at it. Local chaps, not as good as Marsh, mind you. They say it's no standard. Cipher point. Could it just be a distraction?" Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile curling beneath it. "A distraction, Inspector? Perhaps. But a killer who leaves such a note does so with purpose. It is a challenge, a flourish of the mind." He leaned back, his fingers steepled, and closed his eyes, letting the little gray cells work. "We must consider Dr. Marsh's world. Codes, secrets, patterns." He rose, moving to the bookshelf where the open volume on substitution ciphers still lay, its pages marked by a ribbon. The chapter on Polybius squares, a grid-based method of encoding letters as numbers, caught his attention once more. Poirot's fingers traced the diagram, a 5x5 grid mapping letters to coordinates. "Dr. Marsh was reading this," he said, "and the cipher, it mixes numbers and letters. Let us test a hypothesis." He took a fresh sheet of paper from the desk, sketching a Polybius square, assigning letters to coordinates, 1 for A, 1 for B, up to 5 for Y, with I and J sharing a cell. The cipher, 3R7K9M2P8Q, is no simple sequence, he mused. But suppose the numbers and letters are paired, coordinates in the square. Hargreaves peered over his shoulder, his brow furrowed. "You're saying it's a code within a code?" "Précisément," Poirot replied, his pencil moving swiftly. He tested the numbers as row-column pairs, 3 for row 3, R for a letter in that row. But R, as a letter, did not fit the grid's numeric logic. He paused, rethinking. "Non, this is too literal. Perhaps the numbers are the key, and the letters a mask." He tried grouping the sequence differently, pairing 3R7K9M2P8Q, but the grid yielded nonsense. Frustration flickered, but Poirot's mind pivoted. He recalled the charred fragment from the fireplace, the word enigma. "Dr. Marsh was studying wartime codes," he said. "An enigma relied on substitution, not grids. But a Polybius square can hide a phrase." He redrew the grid, this time considering the numbers as positions within a sequence, and the letters as potential decoys. After an hour of trial, a pattern emerged. By mapping the numbers to the grid's coordinates and ignoring the letters as a deliberate misdirection, Poirot tested a sequence, 37928. Using the Polybius square, he translated the numbers into letters. 3-7, row 3, column 2, gave T, 9, row 4, column 4, gave R, and so forth, yielding TRUST. The remaining numbers, when paired differently, suggested NOONE. The cipher, stripped of its red ink letters, whispered a chilling phrase, "Trust no one." Poirot leaned back, his eyes gleaming. "Voilà, Inspector. The cipher speaks. Trust no one." A warning from Dr. Marsh, perhaps, or a taunt from her killer. Hargreaves whistled softly. A warning? You think she wrote it herself? Possible, Poirot said, but unlikely. Her hand was steady, her mind clear, yet the wine was poisoned. The killer, I believe, crafted this note to mislead, to make us chase shadows. The red ink, it is theatrical. None? A flourish to distract from the poison's simplicity. He rose, pacing the study, his gaze lingering on the typewriter, its ribbon smudged with red. This machine, he said, it typed no cipher. The note was handwritten, deliberate. The killer knew Dr. Marsh's methods, her tools. He turned to the desk, opening a drawer to reveal a locked diary, its leather cover worn but intact. Mademoiselle Wren mentioned this. Perhaps it holds the key to why she feared. Hargreaves produced a small key from the evidence bag, found in Marsh's pocket. This should open it. Shall we? Poirot shook his head. Not yet, mon ami. A diary is a private thing, and we must respect its secrets until the moment is right. For now, the cipher tells us enough. Someone wished to sow distrust, to obscure their motive. He slipped the note into an envelope, his fingers precise. We must learn who in this manner knew Polybius Squares, who could mimic Dr. Marsh's craft. Hargreaves scratched his head. Crane's clever enough, and Baxter's a codebreaker. Clara's been trained by Marsh herself. Any of them could have done it. Oui, Poirot said, his voice soft but firm. But the killer's mind is not just clever. It is bold. They poison, they lock a room, they leave a cipher. This is no impulse, but a plan. He glanced at the window, now black with night. Tomorrow, we search their rooms, their papers. The cipher is cracked, but the killer's mask remains. As they left the study, Poirot's mind buzzed with the cipher's warning. Trust no one, he murmured, his eyes distant. The manor's shadows seemed to shift, as if echoing the words. The truth was close, hidden in the interplay of ink and intention, and Hercule Poirot would not rest until it was laid bare. Chapter 9. The Spy's Motive. The morning mist clung to the grounds of Thornfield Manor, shrouding the ancient stone walls in a ghostly veil. Hercule Poirot, his overcoat buttoned against the damp chill, stood in the doorway of Victor Crane's guest suite, his sharp gray eyes fixed on the diplomat. Inspector Hargreaves, ever the faithful shadow, hovered at his side, his face set in a grim line, his notebook poised for new revelations. The cipher's decoded warning, "Trust no one," echoed in Poirot's mind, a chilling thread that pointed to secrets worth killing for. Crane, with his polished charm and shadowed past, was the next knot to unravel. "Monsieur Crane," Poirot began, his voice smooth yet laced with steel. "We meet again. The puzzle of Dr. Marsh's death grows clearer, and I believe you hold a piece of it. Shall we speak frankly?" He stepped into the room, his movements precise, his mustache a perfect arc of scrutiny. Crane, leaning against the writing desk, exuded the same effortless elegance as before. His charcoal suit was immaculate, his dark hair sleek, but a faint tension in his posture betrayed his unease. A cigarette dangled from his fingers, its smoke curling lazily in the dim light. "Frankly, Monsieur Poirot," he said, his smile cool but guarded. "I've been nothing but candid. Poor Evelyn's death is a tragedy, but I'm no more involved than the butler." His eyes met Poirot's, steady yet wary, like a chess player awaiting a gambit. Poirot's lips curved slightly, a smile that promised no mercy. "Candid, you say? Yet your world, monsieur, is one of shadows. A diplomat, oui, but whispers speak of espionage, of secrets traded in foreign capitals. Dr. Marsh, she was decoding wartime messages, secrets, perhaps, that threatened your interests. Crane's smile faltered, but he recovered swiftly, exhaling a plume of smoke. Whispers again, Monsieur Poirot. You put too much stock in gossip. Evelyn's work was academic, dusty old codes from a war long over. I dined with her, shared her wine, and left her alive. My train ticket proves I was in London until late. He gestured to the desk, where the stub still lay, its edges pristine. Poirot paced slowly, his hands clasped behind his back, his gaze sweeping the room. The maps, the novels, the locked brass box, all were as he'd seen before, but now they carried new weight. Your alibi, it is neat, monsieur, but neatness is the cloak of the clever. The train from Paddington arrives at 12:50, oui? Yet Dr. Marsh died near 2 in the morning. A man of your agility could return, enter a locked study, and leave a cipher to confuse. Crane laughed, a low, controlled sound, but his fingers tightened on the cigarette. You flatter my skills, monsieur. I'm no locksmith, nor a poisoner. If you seek a motive, look to Baxter's jealousy or Clara's ambition. I had no quarrel with Evelyn. Poirot stopped, his eyes locking onto Crane's. No quarrel, perhaps, but a fear, non? He reached into his pocket, producing a small notebook, Dr. Marsh's diary, retrieved from her locked desk with the key found in her pocket. He opened it to a marked page, reading aloud. VC knows too much, must protect the Enigma files, trust no one. Poirot's voice was soft, but each word landed like a stone. VC, Monsieur Crane. Victor Crane, oui? Dr. Marsh feared you. Crane's face paled, the cigarette pausing halfway to his lips. That's absurd, he said, his voice still smooth but strained. She was paranoid, jumping at shadows. The Enigma files are ancient history, museum pieces, not threats. She saw spies everywhere, poor woman. He stubbed out the cigarette, his movements sharp. Poirot's mustache twitched. Paranoia or perception? You brought the Bordeaux, monsieur, the wine that carried cyanide. You were seen near the kitchen with a parcel. And here, he stepped to the desk, his gloved hand hovering over the locked box. Perhaps more secrets hide. He tapped the box lightly, his eyes never leaving Crane's. Crane's jaw tightened, but his voice remained calm. Personal effects, as I said. You're welcome to look, but you'll need a warrant. As for the wine, we all drank it at dinner. Baxter, Evelyn, myself. No one else fell ill. Your accusations are thin, Monsieur Poirot. Poirot inclined his head as if conceding the point, but his mind was racing. He moved to a small pile of papers, lifting a folded telegram, half hidden beneath a novel. Its coded text, a jumble of letters, caught his eye. And this, monsieur? A diplomatic message or something more? He held it up, his tone deceptively mild. Crane's eyes flickered, a crack in his composure. Routine correspondence, trade matters. You wouldn't understand the cipher. It's standard for my work. Poirot slipped the telegram into an envelope, his smile enigmatic. I understand more than you think, monsieur. Codes, the codes. They are my playground, as they were Dr. Marsh's. This will be examined. He turned to Hargreaves, who had been watching in silence. Inspector, secure this telegram and verify Monsieur Crane's London dinner. The ambassador, he will confirm the time? Hargreaves nodded, scribbling a note. We'll cable the Savoy. If Crane was there till midnight, he's got a tight window to get back and kill her. Crane stood, his charm fraying. This is harassment, Poirot. I'm a diplomat, not a murderer. You're wasting time while the real killer laughs." Poirot's eyes gleamed, unyielding. "Time, monsieur, is my ally. The truth, it waits for no one, not even a man of your talents." He turned to leave, then paused at the door. "One question more. Did you know of Dr. Marsh's diary or her fears about you?" Crane's silence was answer enough, his face a mask of controlled anger. Poirot nodded, as if satisfied, and stepped into the corridor, Hargreaves at his heels. The mist outside had thickened, wrapping the manor in secrecy. "He is a man of ice," Poirot murmured, "but ice cracks under pressure. The diary, the telegram, they point to a motive. Dr. Marsh knew something that endangered him, and he silenced her." Hargreaves glanced back at the closed door. "You think he's our man? The wine, the cipher, the locked room, it all fits." Poirot's smile was faint. "Fits, oui, but the puzzle is not complete. The killer's hand is clever, but their heart betrays them. We must tread carefully, mon ami, for Crane is no ordinary prey." With that, he descended the stairs, the weight of the cipher's warning. "Trust no one," guiding his steps into the manor's shadowed depths. Chapter 10. The Colleague's Deception. The late morning light filtered through the tall windows of Thornfield Manor, casting a pale glow over the cluttered office of Dr. Leonard Baxter. Hercule Poirot stood amidst the chaos of papers and books, his immaculate suit a stark contrast to the disorder, his gray eyes sharp with purpose. Inspector Hargreaves lingered near the door, his notebook worn from constant use, his expression a mix of weariness and anticipation. The cipher's warning, "Trust no one," still echoed in Poirot's mind, and Dr. Baxter's nervous demeanor and ink-stained fingers made him a thread worth pulling in the intricate tapestry of Dr. Evelyn Marsh's murder. "Dr. Baxter," Poirot began, his voice smooth yet edged with authority, "we meet again, and this time I seek the truth behind your disagreements with Dr. Marsh. The little gray cells, they sense a deception, non?" He stepped closer to the desk, his mustache perfectly aligned, his gaze unyielding. Baxter, seated behind a pile of manuscripts, looked up with a start, his spectacles slipping down his nose. His thinning hair was more disheveled than before, and his tweed jacket bore a fresh ink smudge. "Deception?" he stammered, pushing his glasses up with a trembling hand. "I've told you everything, Monsieur Poirot. Evelyn and I argued, yes, but I didn't kill her. I couldn't." His voice was high, almost desperate, and his eyes darted to Hargreaves as if seeking rescue. Poirot's smile was faint, almost predatory. "Everything, monsieur? Yet your words, they shift like sand. You argued with Doctor Marsh over your work, oui? A wound to your pride, perhaps deeper than you admit." He reached into his pocket, producing the crumpled letter found earlier, its sharp words from Dr. Marsh branding Baxter's work as sloppy. This letter it stung, did it not? To be called inferior by a colleague you labored beside? Baxter's face flushed, his hands clenching the edge of the desk. Yes, it stung. Evelyn was brilliant, but she was cruel with it, always taking credit, always dismissing me. That letter, she wrote it to humiliate me, to push me out of our projects. His voice rose, then broke, and he slumped back, rubbing his temples. But I didn't kill her. I'd never. I respected her, despite everything. Poirot paced slowly, his polished shoes silent on the worn rug. Respect, oui, but resentment festers, non? You had access to her study, her habits, and this... He paused, retrieving the torn paper from the waste bin, its red ink scrawled with 7K9M, a fragment of the cipher found with Marsh's body. A practice cipher, you said, yet it mirrors the note of death. Explain, monsieur, why such a note lies discarded in your office. Baxter's eyes widened, his face draining of color. I told you, it's nothing. I was experimenting, trying to understand her methods. Evelyn used Polybius squares, so I tested sequences, scribbled ideas. It's just a coincidence. His voice cracked, and he pushed his spectacles up again, his hands shaking visibly. Poirot's mustache twitched. Coincidence, monsieur? Hercule Poirot does not believe in such conveniences. This ink, it is the same red as the cipher. You use it, as did Dr. Marsh, and you were in the cellar near the wine on the night she died. A man with your knowledge, could you not procure cyanide, perhaps from a laboratory? Baxter leapt to his feet, his chair scraping the floor. That's outrageous. Yes, I have chemicals for experiments, dyes, solvents, but no cyanide. I'm a cryptographer, not a poisoner. He gestured wildly to the locked cabinet in the corner, its glass front revealing bottles of innocuous substances. Search it if you must. You'll find nothing. Poirot's gaze followed the gesture, noting the cabinet's sturdy lock. We shall, monsieur, in due time. But let us speak of your movements. You left the Red Lion early, not at 9 as you claimed, but closer to 7:30. Where were you until Dr. Marsh's death at 2 in the morning? Baxter sank back into his chair, his face ashen. I came back here to work. I was angry, upset. I didn't want to see anyone. I stayed in my office, alone, going over papers. His voice was barely audible, his eyes fixed on the desk as if it held his salvation. Hargreaves stepped forward, his tone gruff. Alone, with no one to confirm it? That's a weak alibi, Baxter. And you had motive, years of being overshadowed, mocked, plenty to push a man over the edge. Baxter's head snapped up, his eyes blazing. I didn't kill her. I was jealous, yes, but I'd never hurt her. She was the best of us. His voice broke, and he buried his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking. Poirot watched, his expression serene, but his mind racing. Baxter's anguish seemed genuine, his envy a raw wound, yet the cipher fragment and his vague alibi cast shadows of doubt. You are a man of intellect, Dr. Baxter, Poirot said softly. But intellect can serve dark purposes. The cipher, the ink, the cellar, these are threads that tie you to the crime. If you hide something, speak now, before the truth finds you. Baxter lifted his head, his eyes wet. I'm hiding nothing. I swear it. I tried to solve her cipher after I heard about it, to honor her work. That's why I wrote those letters, but I got nowhere. I'm not her, not even close. His voice was a whisper, heavy with defeat. Poirot nodded, slipping the torn paper into an envelope. Merci, monsieur. Your words, they are noted, but the truth, it is a mirror, and it reflects all. He turned to Hargreaves. Inspector, have the cabinet searched for any trace of cyanide, and confirm the barman's account of Dr. Baxter's departure time. Every moment counts. As they left the office, Poirot paused in the corridor, his hands clasped behind his back. The manor's silence was oppressive, its walls guarding secrets yet to be unveiled. He is a man broken by envy, Poirot murmured to Hargreaves. But is he a killer? The cipher fragment, it is too precise to be mere chance. Yet his grief, it rings true. We must look deeper, mon ami, for the hand that wrote deaths. Note, Chapter 11. The Student's Truth. The pale light of a late November afternoon filtered through the leaded windows of Thornfield Manor's library, casting intricate patterns on the polished oak floor. Hercule Poirot stood near a towering bookshelf, his small, fastidious figure dwarfed by the weight of countless tomes, his gray eyes fixed on Clara Wren. The young woman sat at a reading table, her auburn braid loosened by the day's strain, her hands clasped tightly around a worn notebook, Dr. Marsh's notes, entrusted to her student. Inspector Hargreaves lingered by the door, his presence a quiet anchor, as Poirot prepared to unravel the final threads of truth from the grieving protégé. The Cipher's warning, "Trust no one," hung heavy in his mind, and Clara's fear, glimpsed in the garden, suggested she held a key to the locked room mystery. "Mademoiselle Wren," Poirot began, his voice soft yet piercing, like a needle threading through silk. "We have spoken of your sorrow, your devotion to Dr. Marsh. But now I sense you carry a burden, a truth you have not fully shared. The little gray cells, they see your fear. Speak, I implore you, for the truth alone will free you." Clara's eyes, red from tears, lifted to meet his, her face pale as the winter light. "I've told you everything I know, Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice trembling but resolute. "Dr. Marsh was my mentor, my guide. I was in my room that night, studying. I didn't see her die." Her fingers tightened on the notebook, its edges frayed from constant handling. Poirot stepped closer, his mustache quivering slightly, a sign of his heightened focus. "Everything, mademoiselle?" "Non, I think not. In the garden you spoke of a shadow near her study, a figure you thought might be Monsieur Crane. You spoke of Dr. Marsh's fear, her mention of a foreign contact. These are not the words of one who knows nothing. You hold a piece of the puzzle, and it weighs upon you." Clara's breath caught, and she looked down, her hands trembling. I didn't want to say too much. Dr. Marsh told me to stay quiet, to protect myself. She said the work we were doing was dangerous, that there were people who'd do anything to keep it buried. Her voice dropped to a whisper, as if the library's walls might betray her words. Poirot's gaze softened, but his tone remained firm. "Dangerous, oui. And this work, what was it précisément? You mentioned wartime ciphers, ghost codes. What did Dr. Marsh fear?" Clara hesitated, her eyes darting to the window, where the mist curled against the glass. She was decoding messages from the war, enigma variations, she called them, not just academic exercises, but secrets that could still hurt people. She found a name, a code word, Viper. She said it linked to someone high up, someone still active. She was going to report it to the authorities, but she was scared. She said Viper knew she was. Close, Poirot's eyes gleamed, the name Viper, sparking a new thread in his mind. "Viper, you say? And this foreign contact, did she believe it was Monsieur Crane?" Clara nodded slowly, her voice barely audible. "She never said his name outright, but I saw how she acted around him, polite but guarded. A week ago, she caught him looking through her papers in the library. She laughed it off, but later she told me to watch him. She said he wasn't what he seemed." Her hands twisted the notebook, her knuckles white. Poirot paced slowly, his polished shoes silent on the rug. "And this shadow you saw near her study at midnight. Tell me more, mademoiselle. Every detail, it matters." Clara swallowed, her eyes distant. "I couldn't sleep that night. I was at my window, looking out over the courtyard. Around midnight, I saw someone in the hall outside her study, a tall figure moving quietly. It was dark, but the way he moved, it reminded me of Mr. Crane. I didn't go out, didn't call out. I was afraid." Her voice broke, and she buried her face in her hands. If I'd done something, maybe she'd still be alive. Poirot placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, his touch steadying. You are not to blame, mademoiselle. Fear, it is a chain, but you break it now by speaking. This figure, you are certain it was a man? Clara nodded, wiping her eyes. Yes, I think so. Not Dr. Baxter. He's shorter, clumsier. It had to be Mr. Crane. But I didn't see his face, so I can't swear to it. Poirot's mind raced, weaving her words into the tapestry of clues. Crane's presence near the study, Marsh's fear of Viper, the diary's warning about VC, all pointed to the diplomat's shadowed motives. Yet Clara's hesitation suggested more. You have been brave, mademoiselle, he said softly. But one question remains. Did Dr. Marsh teach you the cipher found with her body? The 3R7K9M2P8Q? Clara shook her head. No, she didn't. She taught me Polybius squares, but that note? I tried to decode it after I heard about it, to understand what she was working on. I got nowhere. It wasn't like her usual work. It felt wrong, like it wasn't hers. Her voice trembled, a mix of grief and frustration. Poirot's eyes narrowed, her words confirming his suspicion. Wrong? Oui. The cipher. It is a deception, crafted to mislead. But your honesty, it lights the path. He glanced at the notebook in her hands. This book, it is Dr. Marsh's notes. May I see it? Clara hesitated, then handed it over, her fingers lingering as if reluctant to part with it. Poirot opened it, scanning pages of dense equations and cryptic annotations. One entry caught his eye, written in Marsh's precise hand. Viper, linked to Enigma leak, 1943. VC suspected. Must confirm before acting. Poirot closed the notebook, his expression unreadable. This, mademoiselle, is most valuable. It stays with me, for now. Clara nodded, her eyes welling again. Just find who did this, Monsieur Poirot. She didn't deserve to die. Poirot returned the notebook to his pocket, his voice firm. Rest assured, mademoiselle, the truth will not escape Hercule Poirot. He turned to Hargreaves, who had been listening intently. Inspector, we must search Monsieur Crane's rooms again, with care. This Viper, it is a name that binds our clues, the diary, the cipher, the shadow. Hargreaves nodded, his face grim. Crane's looking guiltier by the minute. If he was in that hall, he had the chance to slip into the study. Chance, oui, Poirot said, his eyes distant. But also motive. Dr. Marsh uncovered a secret that threatened him, a secret worth killing for. As they left the library, Poirot paused, glancing back at Clara, who sat staring at the empty table. Her truth had tightened the noose around Crane, but the puzzle was not yet complete. The manor's shadows whispered of a killer's cunning, and Poirot's little gray cells were ready to listen. Chapter 12. The Denouement. The grand drawing-room of Thornfield Manor glowed with the soft light of a dozen candles, their flames dancing in the polished silver candelabras. The heavy damask curtains were drawn against the November night, and the fire in the marble hearth crackled, casting flickering shadows across the faces of those gathered. Hercule Poirot stood at the room's center, his small, immaculate figure commanding attention, his gray eyes gleaming with the clarity of truth revealed. Inspector Hargreaves stood by the door, his broad frame tense, his notebook tucked away, ready to act on Poirot's conclusions. The suspects, Victor Crane, Dr. Leonard Baxter, and Clara Wren, sat in a semicircle, their expressions a tableau of apprehension, defiance, and sorrow. Mesdames et messieurs, Poirot began, his voice clear and measured, carrying the weight of finality. "We are gathered to unmask the killer of Dr. Evelyn Marsh, a woman of brilliance who met her end in a locked study, a poisoned glass by her side, a cryptic note in her hand. The cipher, 3R7K9M2P8Q, has spoken. Trust no one, and now Hercule Poirot shall speak, to lay bare the truth." He paced slowly, his hands clasped behind his back, his mustache perfectly aligned. "This crime, it is a masterpiece of cunning, a locked room, a poison, a cipher, all designed to confound. But the little gray cells, they see through the deception. Let us begin with the scene. Dr. Marsh, dead by cyanide in her wine, the room sealed, the key inside. How, you ask, does a killer enter and leave such a fortress? The answer, it is simple yet brilliant. Poirot's gaze swept the room, lingering on each suspect. The poison, it was in the Bordeaux, a gift from Monsieur Crane. The bottle, tested by our diligent inspector, contained traces of cyanide, added not at dinner but later, in the study. The killer used a duplicate key, crafted in advance to enter after Dr. Marsh locked herself in. This key, it was hidden in plain sight, among the manor's spares, accessible to one who knew where to look. Victor Crane leaned forward, his polished charm intact, but strained. "A bold theory, Monsieur Poirot, but you've no proof. I drank from that wine at dinner, as did Baxter. Why would I poison a bottle I shared?" Poirot's smile was sharp, like a blade catching light. "A clever question, Monsieur Crane, but you anticipate my thoughts. The wine was safe at dinner. We, poured by the butler, Grayson. But you, a man of subtlety, brought the bottle as a Trojan horse. You visited the kitchen later, seen by the maid Ellen, with a parcel, perhaps containing a vial of cyanide. In the study, you added the poison to the bottle doctor. Marsh took with her, knowing her habit of sipping while working." Crane's eyes narrowed, his voice cool. "Preposterous. I was in London until nearly 1, as the train ticket proves. And a duplicate key? You found no such thing." Poirot's mustache twitched. "The ticket, oui, it is your shield, but it is flawed. The station master confirms the 12:50 arrival, giving you time to return, to slip into the study by 2. As for the key, it was returned to the butler's spares, unnoticed in the chaos. But your greatest error, monsieur, was the cipher." He produced the note, its red ink vivid in the candlelight. This 3R7K9M2P8Q, decoded as "Trust no one," was your flourish, a distraction to make us chase shadows. You knew, Doctor, Marsh's work with Polybius squares, learned from her papers you rifled through, as Mademoiselle Wren witnessed. You crafted the note to mimic her style, but it was too perfect, too theatrical, written in the red ink you knew she used. Baxter stirred, his spectacles glinting. "But I had red ink too, Monsieur Poirot, and I argued with Evelyn pitted against her. Why not suspect me?" Poirot turned to him, his gaze piercing. "You, Doctor Baxter, were consumed by envy. Oui, the letter from Dr. Marsh, calling your work sloppy, burned deeply. You were in the cellar near the wine, and a fragment of the cipher was found in your office. But your motive, it is weak, professional pride, not murder. The cipher fragment was a scholar's attempt to understand, not to kill. Your guilt is of the heart, not the hand." Baxter's face paled, but he said nothing, his hands trembling. Clara, her eyes wide, spoke softly. Then it was, "Mr. Crane?" Poirot nodded, his attention shifting to the diplomat. "Mademoiselle Wren, you saw a shadow near the study, a tall figure like Monsieur Crane. You feared to speak, but your truth was vital. Dr. Marsh's diary revealed her suspicion of VC linked to a code name, Viper, a wartime traitor. She uncovered your secret, Monsieur Crane, your dealings with foreign powers, secrets that could ruin you. Crane stood, his face a mask of fury. This is slander. You've no proof, a diary entry, a vague shadow. I'm a diplomat, not a spy. Poirot raised a hand, silencing him. The telegram in your room, monsieur, decoded by my methods, ordered silence of a codebreaker nearing dangerous truths. The Enigma files, they were your undoing. Dr. Marsh had to die to protect your treachery. He turned to Hargreaves. Inspector, the telegram, it is evidence enough for arrest. Hargreaves stepped forward, his voice firm. Victor Crane, you're under arrest for the murder of Dr. Evelyn Marsh. He signaled to two constables, who approached Crane, whose charm crumbled into a snarl. You'll regret this, Poirot, Crane spat as he was led away. You've nothing but theories. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Theories, monsieur, built on truth. The little gray cells, they do not err. As Crane was escorted out, the room fell silent, the weight of justice settling like dust. Clara wept softly, and Baxter stared at the floor, his shoulders slumped. Poirot addressed them gently. The truth, it is painful, but it heals. Dr. Marsh's legacy lives in you, Mademoiselle Wren, and in your work, Dr. Baxter. As Poirot left the drawing room, the night air greeted him, crisp and clear. The heart hides many secrets, he murmured to Hargreaves, but none escape Hercule Poirot. With a final glance at the manor, he stepped into the darkness, his task complete.